So, hello. I'm in my mom's office trying to be productive. I'm doing an independent study this semester, and in that independent study, I'm going to be ideally crafting some more episodes to a podcast I started over the summer. I made one episode, which, I immediately start to feel shitty about or something, as if one podcast is nothing. Like, it was my first podcast. I should probably give myself some slack. So I made an episode, congrats to me, and I'd like to continue those episodes. I have to basically craft a syllabus, and I'm trying to do that right now. I've had conversations with my mom, who, by the way, is a professor of sociology, and I'm usually hoping we'll just have the answers, be like, oh, this book. It does not always happen. Usually she tells me I need to just start researching, which is my biggest fear because I go down rabbit holes, which if you've ever researched before, I'm sure you can relate. I'm also a bit of a perfectionist, and I'd probably say a little OCD, and I have out of this world expectations of, reality, and so I kind of get nervous that I usually get anxious. I also have a lot of anxiety. So I get anxious that my task is going to become impossible, and then I am terrified to start. So we're starting today, and yeah. Hello. Yeah. It's really bad angle.
Wow, this angle is great.
I could put more effort into it, I guess. But
The story of my life.
yep, looks good.
Where are you? Your mom's office?
I am indeed. And I'm also vlogging this. Because that was Kate Zambon's idea. I was wondering if you might have any ideas for me.
Wait, you're not doing the podcast about consent?
I am.
Just overall, what is consent?
So I might say that consent is a conversation. Most of us aren't having that conversation.
Yeah.
In terms of media theory, any women's studies stuff at all that you're like, how are you not talking about this person?
You could use feminist standpoint theory. I always come back to that.
You always come back to that.
Consent might mean something different to a white woman than it does to a black woman.
That's interesting. She was like, it sounds like some of what you're talking about is structure versus agency. Like the structure of how our society's set up, sex education, all of that is the structure. Like, I want to talk about sex education, of not being comprehensive enough, and talking about everything from a risk prevention perspective as opposed to empowering us to feel a certain way about our bodies.
Right.
The way we talk about it is fear and danger and problems, STDs, STIs, unwanted pregnancies, rape. And there's not really conversations about asking for what you want, deserving what you want.
Sex for pleasure.
How to have good, healthy sex.
Yeah, their answer is don't have sex.
And we take preventative measures. So it's there's these power dynamics at play from the social structures that contribute to this lack of feeling of agency to feel empowered enough to speak up. I feel the thing that I'm most interested in thinking about is my goal with this is to make people more thoughtful. I just met with Kate Zambon. She gave me the go ahead on some of my theories, and I was really confused because I wasn't sure if I was supposed to have some sort of communication theory, and now I feel like I'm allowed to basically do what I was already planning on doing, and not thinking that I'm just doing everything wrong because I didn't have a specified communication theorist. Then we sort of talked about how can I set up an episode for somebody who's struggling with the ideas of feeling empathetic for the Me Too movement and feeling empathetic for people who are expressing any sort of Me Too story, but also wondering when it's gone too far, wondering, are we still allowed to appreciate, certain art? When has it been too long? Should we look at everybody with a fine-tooth comb necessarily? Basically setting up some sort of episode that can walk somebody who's sort of struggling with those two ideas through the prospects of, I don't know what I'm saying, but I had to get those ideas out of my head before I forgot them. This morning, I met with a reference librarian, and we discussed the areas of what my topic covers in terms of what disciplines it covers, how I should narrow my search and my research. Ultimately, I've just talked my topics to death. Not really to death, I'm going to talk about them indefinitely. But I've talked about my planning process with basically everybody and kept feeling like so confused and not really sure how to just narrow my themes down, like what the themes of my episodes are gonna be. And so I talked to a lot of friends. Somebody I talked to yesterday discussed with me how structure versus agency is too big, but also happens to encapsulate like most of what I'm gonna discuss as a theme. So sub-themes within structure versus agency is sufficient in terms of picking my 3 major themes. So I'm narrowing it down to the three being sex education, and I'll incorporate porn because porn is the de facto sex education. And then media portrayals, don't look at my nails, they're awful. And then gendered power dynamics. All of that will pertain to my central research question, which is...
Your question is like, what is getting in the way?
What's getting in the way of that?
Yeah.
What's getting in the way of us understanding that consent is more complicated than we have previously been discussing it. Viewing it as something that's more than a yes or no question. So just understanding that consent is more complicated than we discuss in popular culture, in our day-to-day lives, how we think of it, how we teach it. So the structures working against us recognizing that consent is complicated, because humans are complicated. I don't know. I could just be excited, you know, rather than like scared, because like nobody wants me to like fail, I'm pretty sure, so that's interesting, right? How about you, Kate? You want me to fail? Didn't think so. So since everybody here can agree that nobody would prefer that I fail, why don't I just like, I don't know, operate with excitement as opposed to operating with fear of failure? Welcome to my brain.